401k advisors want to build a scalable practice, but aren't always sure what to do next. Welcome to Outcomes, the podcast designed to help advisors think, make decisions, and cast a vision to create a business for the future. Here's your host, Ross Marino, financial planner, author, speaker, and CEO of Advisor2X.
Today, we are joined by Daniel Bryant, President of Retirement and Wealth Planning at Sheridan Road Financial Advisors. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ross. Great to be here.
So let's start off with a situation that you and I are both familiar with. We'll set the stage. You drive up to the company, you go into the building, and you finally make it to the break room. And there it is, a room packed with people. And as we walk in, we know as advisors, this is one of the most important moments of their financial life. For people who have never enrolled in the 401k, especially the younger people, the decision they make today in that room can change the entire trajectory of their life. But as you're looking across the room, you spot some people and you can see the look on their face. And you know, no matter what you say, they're just not going to enroll. Something's holding them back. Can you walk us through that moment when you realized, I have got to dig deeper, I've got to figure out how I'm going to help these people, and you dove into a research process?
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Absolutely. That is one of the watershed moments when you go into an enrollment meeting and you look at the audience, those participants, and they look back at you and you know they are living and dealing with a myriad of issues, financial stresses, how to prioritize spending, saving, borrowing, and how they prioritize what's important in their lives. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we started to think a lot more in depth around this idea of financial wellness, or this idea of how do we help people help themselves. And I think what's fascinating about the study of behavioral economics is really some of the research, the academic research that was done 10, 20, 30 years ago. That research has sort of, grown and manifested itself into how we actually construct plans today, retirement plans or executive comp plans, and today even benefit plans, to help more from a socialistic, paternalistic socialism standpoint, where we need to help nudge the participants to help them make better financial decisions. I think left to our own devices, unfortunately, we as humans, we don't make the best decisions, right? We impulsively borrow money or spend money when we don't need to. And those are the sorts of things that we dove into to think about.
And that's excellent. There are issues that these people are dealing with, and that's what's preventing them from enrolling or increasing their deferral percentage. And no matter how much education we provide, it's going to be tough to nudge them along, as you said. And that's actually a fantastic book. And I love the whole idea of, we get up in front and we teach and we try to help people see their future selves. And here's what you'll have down the road. Here's what you'll need down the road. And who actually knew that the best way, in many cases, to run an enrollment meeting is negative election? We could teach them or say, if you don't want to be in the 401k, just check this box. Otherwise, you're in. Hey, there you have it. 93% of the people actually sign up. It's brilliant, but it's psychology. That's part of the answer. But we're getting to this point where they're not able to make that decision because they're in a situation where they just can't afford to save. So your research and what you tried to do is figure out, how can we help them before they get to that point where now they can no longer save? And you shared some of that research with me, some of the institutions that you worked with and some of the professors, and it was a pretty significant list out there. And it made me think, how do you even find these people? Do you just shoot off an email or look them up on the internet? Or is it one of those stories of, well, I knew a guy who knew a guy, and then all of a sudden you get introduced to him? So can you give us some insight into how you connected with these people and the kind of research that you did with them and what they were doing on their own?
Sure. So I think if you think about the granddaddies of the behavioral, neurological, social sciences, so you think about Richard Thaler, right, Nobel Prize winner from the University of Chicago, or Shlomo Bernartzi, who in our world, wrote Save More Tomorrow. And that was a chapter in Thaler's book, Nudge. But there's all sorts of this next generation group of behaviorists out there in terms of Dan Ariely and what he's doing at the Common Sense Lab, or Leslie Turner, who's now at Vanderbilt doing amazing research at around student loan debt and debt remediation. But the short of it is, it's literally you pick up the phone sometimes and you reach out directly, or it was friends of friends who got me in touch with them. I mean, Richard Thaler I've known for decades. He's obviously a superstar in today's world. But from there, you get to he's had this huge influence over so many different people. So all the folks at UCLA have collaborated with Richard. Dan Ariely has collaborated with Richard. So you go down the list, and it's a little bit of happenstance, a little bit of stick-to-itiveness. But I think the idea of saying, hey, how do we write a book or do some research around wellness in the workplace, and the employer being the right distribution channel for these ideas and these practices, that was a little bit of a different take than what they've been doing research on. So they loved it. They love to participate. And I mean, that's what they live for, right? Doing the research, publishing something, and then actually seeing it implemented so it's an actionable plan.
That really is a unique way to approach it. The books and the research have been out for a while, but to actually approach it from the standpoint of wellness in the workplace and realizing that going through someone's primary employer is the right distribution channel to help with financial wellness. I'm sure that got some of these researchers excited to figure out how can we do this through the workplace environment, which was great. And you mentioned Dan Ariely, and I read his book, and the quote I have from Dan's book, it says, "We're not just irrational, we're predictably irrational." So as I think through this, and I spent some time thinking about our conversation before we started, and you know how I'm big on questions. So I like to write down questions. I like to question storm instead of brainstorm. So I first wrote down, how can we help people save more? And your research was to zero in on the issues that really got in the way of that decision. So hopefully, if we can figure what that is, we can help these people, and then they can eventually save. So what is it that you learned?
Yeah, so what we say is you can't save more tomorrow, as Shlomo Bernartzi articulated in his bestseller, unless you borrow less today. So if you think about millennials today, what we know is that 25 cents of every dollar that they earn goes to pay back debt. Credit card debt, student loan debt. So the average is about $5,000-6,000 of credit card debt, $35,000 of student loan debt. Obviously, you know the statistic, 1.7, almost $1.8 trillion of student loan debt in this country. 3/4 of college graduates have it when they retire or when they graduate and start their work career. So they're entering the workforce, unlike baby boomers or Gen Xers, they're entering the workforce already way behind the 8 ball. They've got to pay off this load of debt, figure out how to prioritize things. So when they're looking at that enrollment meeting, going back to your opening comment of how do I save in this 401k plan when I've got 25% credit card debt overhanging me, and I've got X percent in my student loans. And so it's very difficult for someone to say, I need to save for an emergency fund, $500 or $1,000. I need to save for retirement, which again, Al Hirschfield, and I know this is a little bit of a sidebar story, but he's got this, he's a professor at UCLA, and he talks about your future self. It's very hard for a 22 or 25-year-old to think about their future self at age 50 or 60. Your brain actually thinks of that person in the third person. It's not even you, right? So that's really those are the drivers in terms of why individuals can't save more money in their retirement plan, because they've got this huge overhang when they start.
25 cents on every dollar going towards paying back debt. That's a hindrance. Obviously, it's going to be hard for people to try to segment some of their money to put towards savings, even if it's just an emergency fund, let alone a 401k. But I know they're juggling lots of bills, and it's not an easy thing to do when you're coming out of college and you have all of this debt out there. But technology is now being leveraged. And I know I know you love technology, and there's no way we were going to make it through this conversation without me questioning you about what is going on in the tech world and what's going on with the venture capitalists. So they're putting money into different technologies, knowing that this is how we engage the millennials, and they're using it in order to help them save more for tomorrow. So can you let us know what you see out there, what you're hearing as far as how technology is going to be implemented to help these people save more for their freedom?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting is, we think about the 401k as this old, sort of fuddy-duddy technology, but it is one of the most amazing technology advancements that's been developed in the last 30 or 40 years. Think about it. You payroll deduct, you've saved the money. It's very, very easy to do. But if you think about the venture firms and the private equity firms, financial technology or fintech has been the largest single investment area for the past 8 years. So let's think about that. So the guys in Silicon Valley, where are they putting their money? They're trying to help individuals lower their debt burden and save more money in a myriad of different ways. So it's fascinating to see where the money is going and how they're trying to drive those point solutions into the workplace. So right now you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of little point solutions. So think about Cashable. So if you think about Cashable, Kamir, founded that company 8 years ago, I believe, in New York. It's a lending program that helps, an employer provide a lending program so participants can borrow money and then pay it back through their payroll. Seems pretty simple. Didn't gain any sort of traction until the COVID crisis, when people needed money and they either had to borrow from their retirement plan or find another way to borrow money. And it's really sort of taken off. And I think if you think about technology, think about data analytics as well. We can go in a lot of different directions from a technology standpoint, but big data, bandwidth, software technology solutions, and even ADP, the folks like that, being able to combine these things together has been critically important for the success of people being able to save.
So let's dig a little deeper here. You just said more money is going into fintech than anything else. So venture capital money is going into the world of finance, more so than social media, more so than gaming. It's actually going into managing personal finances. Right now, we're late summer 2020. We're in the middle of the pandemic. I listened to you about a year ago at the Outcomes Conference in Denver, and you talked about the technology and what was coming down the road. Well, compliments of the pandemic, we're certainly seeing an acceleration of the adoption of certain technologies. And I'm sure there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that I'm not even aware of, but I know you're connected with some of these people. So can you take a moment and talk about what you think is happening as far as the acceleration and what kind of technologies are moving much faster where they're going to be adopted sooner rather than a few years down the road?
Yeah, I think there's real quick to set the stage. I think there's three major trends that have happened or things that have transpired in the last 5 months. I think we've leapfrogged literally 5 years in 5 months when it comes to benefits, retirement, and technology in the workplace. So this idea of emotional, financial, and health wellness in the workplace, I think there's been this bright light shined on it in the last 5 months. That wasn't really the case before. So I think number one, that's really important. The second thing is the CEOs and CFOs of companies now, Ross, they very much are in tune with this. I think, a year or two ago, we would be talking to the HR director and they would need our help to convince the CFO that wellness programs were needed and important. Now there's complete alignment we're seeing at senior management, board, and HR saying, you know what, if people are furloughed or out of work, this financial wellness or anxiety is going to affect our entire company, right? And then the third thing I would mention real quick is it is now millennial. It's the time of the millennial, right? So the fact that student loan debt repayment was included in that CARES Act, that is a direct result of the millennials turning 40. There's almost 100 million of them. They are driving public policy. And I think for me, that was one of the things that was amazing, which is I think our legislators realized we need to accommodate and focus on those guys. So The amount of technology being driven by the employer has been incredible, and a lot of that, as you probably know, is included in like the voluntary benefits package. So now there are hundreds of options. Employees have a tough time trying to discern which of these hundreds of technologies I'm going to use, and that's what we're going to sort out over the next 5 years. You don't need hundreds, you need a package, and you need someone to help you recommend what do you really need. Do you need this? Do you need this? And that's where we are today.
So now we're to the point where there's hundreds of options out there, and obviously people don't need hundreds of different technology providers or services out there, but what they do need is a package that is the right fit for their company. And as you were speaking, I had a kind of that next question queued up in my mind. Now, I was actually listening, I was present, I wasn't just drifting off, but it made me think that if there's all these technologies out there, maybe it's going to work, but maybe it won't work as fast as we thought it would. So I'm wondering, what is the challenge going to be to mass adoption? Because we know the end result is that package that really is going to help people customized for that company, but it may be a little slower than we thought. So let's go out 5 years and let's say it just isn't being adopted like we thought it would. The technology's there, the apps are there, the processes are there. We look at it as professionals and think people should be all over this. Companies should be rolling this out and helping their people build their future and gain freedom down the road that comes from saving for tomorrow. But if it's not happening, there must be some obstacles in the way. There's got to be some reasons that are preventing these companies from adopting the way we think they should. So if there are obstacles that are going to get in our way or at least slow us down a little bit, what do you think those would be?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I think that technology is this ongoing tsunami. I mean, it's like Pac-Man, it's eating everything in its path, right? So this idea that we're going to slow it down or not adopt it, not adopt it as quickly as we want, is just not a realistic, way to look at things. So I think also the millennials, the fact that they are now, a majority of the workforce, 75% of the voting public in 2025, companies have no choice. They're going to adopt these things. I do agree with you, though. If we look forward 5 years, sort of this convergence of benefits brokers, healthcare, financial care, all coming together, I think that's going to continue. So as that sort of continues to converge, I think then HR directors and CFOs have a much better view of what technologies do we really need? How do we leverage the technology? So I think there could be an educational and training sort of curve where HR directors are going to need to embrace the technology, better understand the data, target market, how we can offer solutions to different groups within companies. But I really think you hit it on the head. The only thing that could slow it down is there's a little bit of information overload. But I also feel I was on the phone last week, and I think someone was thinking about having a prescriptive measure, hundreds of solutions, all little teeny bit solutions for different people, mortgages, emergency budgeting, digital advice, retirement income, all these different things, student loans. But if you went to a company and you said, look, we already know the data. We know millennials backwards and forwards. We actually know what needs your employees have because it's out there. And you do some surveys, you'd be prescriptively saying, look, these are the 4 or 5 things, tools, apps, coaching, advice that your employees need. I think that's the way we're going to be driving this through the employer.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. I love talking to people who are visionaries, who are in executive roles where they have to look out to the future and figure out, where does our organization need to go? And if you look out 5 years, I like to ask myself, who's going to own the market? What type of services are they going to offer? How is their business going to be structured where they are dominating their particular market with what they're trying to do out there? And if I understood you correctly, what you said is that I need to understand the general data of what's going on in these companies. I need to understand their demographics. So if you're a tech company, this is what your people are dealing with. If they're mostly 25 to 45 years old, this is what they're dealing with. And as I'm talking to the HR director or whomever the decision maker is, their head is now bobbing up and down and they're thinking, yes, that's exactly right. And I think from a market position, I'm going to be able to dominate my market in 5 years if I do that, because I've now answered, well, I'd say it's the second most important question they need to know. First is, can I trust this person? But once we go past the trust, the second is, does this person, this advisor who's talking to me, do they actually understand me and my people? And when I'm able to share this data, they get to say, yes, you actually understand us. And as we go through our prescriptive process, now we can get more specific and we can put a package together for them. When I all of a sudden know what they need based on their own demographics, now I've got their attention. Is that what we're saying here?
Exactly. And you know, if you think about the Fortune 500, I mean, they've already got the data, right? They've already got these data analytics either in-house or they sort of already know that. I think it's really filtering down to the hundreds of thousands or millions of smaller companies that don't have the bandwidth or the size of HR departments or finance departments to do that work. So it's going to take 5 years to sort of come down market. But absolutely, we know everything about the millennial demographic, right? We know they're buying the avocado slicer when they check out at Amazon. We know this, we know that, we know student loans. So you can go to a company today and say, look, you're based here. I've got the data. I can look at the national averages by region. You can do a quick little survey. You know who has pet insurance, who's a homeowner, who rents, who's got this, who's on their parents, healthcare, who's not. You are able to sort of prescriptively say, I'm not 100% right, but I bet I'm 90% accurate on, your group of 20 to 30-year-olds. This is what they're dealing with today. And, you could be a little off, but not much. And I think that's exactly where we're going to be in 5 years.
It's not 100%, but certainly it is close enough. I agree there. Now, I must apologize if I just shared your strategic plan for world domination. Now I know you share freely, so I don't think you're going to mind that we shared that. But you said something else there on top of understanding the data that I think is important. You talked about training the HR people and the end user. Now we can create super simple tools or modules to help people make decisions and meet them where they're at. We don't need a 100-page financial plan to engage someone in the financial wellness process. We can break it up. Did you have a baby? Here's what you do. Did you just get married? Here's what you do. Buying your first home? Here's some things you need to know. We can keep it simple, but no matter how simple we make it, you still need tools and you still need training to help people understand and use those tools. So if I hear you correctly, I think the plan is understand the data, be in a position to diagnose the client, prescribe, and then the key, have a plan to implement that by training the HR people and the end user as well. Now, am I right now inside the head of Daniel Bryant and I'm explaining how you're going to eat your competition for breakfast 5 years from now? Did I get that right, Daniel?
Pretty good, pretty good. I think the only thing I would say is also you're totally right. We need to train people, but also, how consumers, how a 35-year-old consumes things. How do they buy things? How do they assess and analyze things? So frictionless, borderless, we channelless. So how we're delivering benefits on our app, on our tablet, on the go. How can we change things? Not quite there on the benefits side, as we know. We're probably 3 or 4 years away. Literally, if you talk to these private equity guys, they're like, yeah, probably 3 or 4 years away to be able to do that all online. But you're going to need some training, no doubt about it. But employees are a lot smarter from a technology standpoint. Again, as the boomers start to retire, you're going to have an entire generation that's grown up with Google and Amazon, and they just consume things differently. So they want to consume their financial services, their loans, their mortgages, their benefits. They want it presented to them and they want to consume it a little differently. So those enrollment meetings, they may be a thing of the past in 10 years because it's going to be a different way to enroll people.
Yes, enrollment meetings as we knew them are going to be a thing of the past. The technology is going to be so much more integrated. It's going to look a lot different in 10 years. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Well, I want to wrap this up now, and I want to finish with a question. And you can respond to that question, or you can go somewhere else with it. Whatever you like, you may close however you like. I'm listening to you describe the Daniel Bryant strategic plan for world domination, and I think it's great. But as I hear what you're describing, it's not a small practice offering. This isn't something that I can put together myself and just maybe add one or two people. So the question that popped into my head was, if this is what I need to do 5 years from now, can I create that and build it organically? And the follow-up question would be, if not, do I need to start looking at who I need to partner with or merge with or whatever? But are smaller advisors and teams going to struggle to try to replicate what you're doing and what other companies are trying to do with this broad-based service offering?
Well, I think you're spot on. I just think that the advisor today is going to have a little different toolkit. They're going to have a little different perspective. They're going to need to have a little different skill set in the next 5 or 10 years. I think about 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, what were we talking about? Fiduciary, Pension Protection Act, like what? It's complete. It's only been 5 years. And yet the conversation, the vernacular, the narrative is nothing to do with that. Still has something to do with that. So I just think if you go out 5 or 10 years, I think the advisor today, even if you're in a small shop, an individual practitioner, you're just going to have a broader perspective of what's important to the client and what's important to the participant. We talk it about all the time. It's the power of why. Why do we do what we do, right? We're no longer just about enrolling people in the meeting. It's really helping improve outcomes, focusing on the future, helping them borrow less, save more. And I think, so there could be some partnerships involved, but I think you're also morphing into a little bit of an advisor, life coach. I do think you need to understand the other side of the equation in terms of healthcare, Medicare, Social Security, all those things that we already know a little bit of. But I think that's going to be a key part of your toolkit for sure.
I agree. If the end user wants that, then the advisors have to figure out a way to deliver that. Daniel, thank you so much for being on the show today. Was this fun?
That was great. Love it. Anytime.
Hopefully we'll do it again. Thanks so much for being here, Daniel.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for listening to Outcomes. Subscribe now to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Advisor 2X. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.